this is Parenting Resources and Initiatives. We're a non-denominational faith-based organization, and we're committed to helping parents fulfill their God-given role in raising well-rounded children. Our vision is to see an empowered family where, every member of the family is thriving and there's excellent parent-child communication and the children's potentials are maximized. Those are core expectations. Those are the things we look forward to even as we fulfill our mission. So once again, our goals are helping parents understand their roles and responsibilities, helping them identify the challenges the children face growing up in this generation, and especially at a time like this. We encourage parents to be actively involved in the education of their children. We educate, train, and assist parents in creating a conducive and supportive atmosphere so that the children are well equipped to deal with any challenges and overcome. We also work with parents to identify opportunities for children to be mentored by qualified and capable adults. So my name is Bola Odetokun, and I am the founder of Parenting Resources and Initiatives. We have two women that will be joining me in facilitating this program. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. So meet our March 2021 facilitators. The first person I'm going to introduce is Miss Foluke Ajayi. Miss Ajayi is an early childhood educator, and she's the director of Dream Molders Education Limited, a service provider of consulting opportunities and professional development training to early years care and education providers. She has worked in the private and public sector of education for more than 20 years. She's a committed Christian invested in child evangelism ministry, and she's married with 2 children. Please welcome Ms. Foluke Ajayi. The second person is Ms. Bola Adeshuyi. She's the CEO of Sigus Consulting Group, and she's the managing consultant as well. CEO Sigus Consulting Group is a management consulting firm, and she's an ardent proponent of community service and has served in various community and non-profit organizations. Ms. Adeshuyi is passionate about accessibility of information, opportunities, and resources to all communities. She's also an alumnus of the Secha Health Leadership Institute. Ms. Adeshuyi has led the project team for the establishment of a free clinic for medical services to the undeserved and uninsured. She served as executive director of the clinic and a director on the board until 2018. Let me also say that she's on the board of PRI. So please help me welcome Ms. Adeshuyi. Those will be our facilitators for today. So again, everybody, you're welcome to Parenting Resources and Initiatives. Welcome to developing and communicating family values. So what is a family? Of course, many of us or all of us already know what a family is. A family is a social unit consisting of parents and the children. Of course, in this case, the children don't have to be biological children. Anyone, in a broad sense, anyone that you have the privilege to nurture or to raise is considered your child. So many of us will fit into that categories, even if you're not yet married or you don't have children of your own yet. If you have anybody under your wings that you're nurturing, especially somebody much younger, you are likely playing the role of a parent. So a family unit is consisting of parents and children, whether biological or adoptive children. So that's a broad definition of family. And what are values? Values, a person's principles are of or standards of behavior by which they live, one's judgment of what is important in life, those things that serve as a guide for human behavior. That's what you consider as values. Values can also be the basic and fundamental beliefs that guide or motivate attitudes or actions. They help us to determine what is important to us. Your values are the things that you believe are important in the way you live and work. And under normal circumstances, your values should determine your priorities. Because if something is not of value to you, it shouldn't be on your priority list. So your values under normal circumstances should determine your priorities. Values are individual beliefs that motivate people to act in one way or another. So generally, people are predisposed to adopt the values that they are raised with in a general sense, because your family is where you learn things. Your family is where you pick up things. So most of us tend to just flow with whatever we see in our families, whatever we see parents doing, whatever we see, maybe if you have older siblings doing, you just sort of take that as, the values, as what you should do. If you see your mom do something over and over and over again, you just take that as the norm. If you see your dad do something, or you see your older siblings do something, because they are older than you, because they are ahead of you, you just sort of accept that as the norm and you live by that. And that is why it is important for us to consciously define values, for us to consciously set expectations, because since we all just automatically pick things up from the family anyway, so we might as well set expectations as to what we want. So putting this together, we can say family values then are this traditional set of social standards defined by the family and a history of customs that provide the emotional and physical basis for raising a family. Our social values are often reinforced by our spiritual or religious beliefs and traditions. They are the things that determine how you live together, how you interact, even as a unit. Because, of course, we interact with one another in a family setting. How should I be speaking to my children? How should my children speak to me? How should I speak to my spouse? When people come into our family space, how do we relate with them? It's our values that determine those things. And again, like I said, it's only important that we define the expectations. So traditional family values usually include our beliefs on topics such as religion, communication, traditions, marriage, how we interact with one another, how we spend time together, what do we do? Those things, shape what our values are. So how do values help us, or what importance are values? Values exist whether we recognize them or not. And your values help you to decide how you walk, how you play, where you walk. Your values can also determine what choices you make. For instance, if in a situation where you have choices, your values is what decides or determines or help you to make a good determination. For instance, if you're looking for a job and one job is going to allow you to stay in town and one job is going to make you to travel. I have a friend or a colleague who took a lower paying job so that he can be more with his family. He had I think 6 or 8 years back, he had a 6-figure salary that was, going well for him. But then he was constantly traveling. And so one day we were chatting and it was like, oh, this job is a step down for me. And I said, why? He said, because this job, when I interviewed for this job and I realized that I was going to be in one location, it does not, require any kind of traveling at all. And, I told myself at this point in my life, this is what I want. I want to be with my children. My children are still very young. And, this person is not a Christian, but that tells you, what kind of value he's like. He's a family-based person. His family is important to him. So he was willing and he actually made the decision to take a lower job. So that's how values can shape the decisions you make. It can also mean, okay, do I accept a promotion or not? If a promotion is going to put you, like one of my CIOs said, they were going to send her to China. And, she said it was why she was expecting and she was expectant, but she didn't think it was China they were going to send her to. She was thinking maybe a place that would be more like maybe 5 hours flight and you're there, maybe like UK. So at that point in time, she declined. And her sponsor, her executive sponsor, who really was looking forward to her taking that role, was very disappointed. And she herself was disappointed, but then she knew that if anything happened to her child, 5 hours flight compared to 16 hours flight or 18 hours flight going to China is not a joke. So she graciously declined. Of course, it was a tough call. It was a tough decision. It affected her career, but now she's back in a good place. But what we are saying is your values will determine those kind of things for you. Because if she didn't care about, whether her children could reach her in a jiffy or her husband could reach her in a jiffy or she herself could come home. For instance, sometimes if you get a call that your child is sick or something, you want to be there, like as soon as possible. 18 hours is not as soon as possible. So our values, what is important to us, determine or help us to determine those kinds of things, help us to make decisions in those kind of situations. And our values also help us to decide the path we are going to travel on. Which path works for me? Which path aligns with my values? If I go on this path, will I be true to myself? If I go on the other path, will I be true to myself? So I'm going to quickly share a few points. Number one, identifying and understanding your values is a challenging and important exercise. Your personal values are a central part of who you are and who you want to be. By becoming more aware of these important factors in your life, you can use them. That is, you can use your values as a guide to make the best choice in any situation. Some of life's decisions are really about determining what you value most. When many options seem reasonable, it is helpful and comforting to rely on your values and use them as a strong guiding force to point you in the right direction. I'm going to tell you a quick story. When my kids were much younger, I think my son was actually maybe in 6th or 7th grade. A child came with us. I don't remember if he came with us from church or he came to, I think he must have come home with us. You know, after church, when some kids want to go hang out with other kids. So this particular boy came home with us. And then before, you know, we served lunch and everything. And then I let them go in the playroom and all of that. And then all of a sudden, this boy came upstairs, opened the fridge and started eating out of the fridge, some snacks and whatever. And then my son came upstairs and my son saw him and my son said, "No, stop it right now. Stop it right now. Did you ask my mommy? Did you ask my mommy?" And the boy was like, "What is wrong with you? You know, I just wanted some snacks." And my son was like, "Yeah, you need to ask my mom." And he was like, "Oh, you ask your mom permission to take stuff, da 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 da. I do anything I want to do in my house." And my son was like, "Well, sorry. In this house, we ask mommy for permission. If you have had breakfast or you have had lunch or whatever, and you want something in between, you ask. You're going to get," I was surprised because my son was saying, "You're going to get a yes anyway, but we ask." And, you know, secretly, I was behind the door and I was hearing this conversation. I was really, really happy. And the reason is that it helped me to know that my son is not going to go to somebody's house and yank their fridge open and grab something from there. Apparently, this child must not have been taught, or he just chose to ignore whatever his parents taught him. You know, how would you go to somebody's house and yank their fridge open and grab snacks and start eating? And, you know, it's something small, but that's the kind of attitude that people grow up with. And if they're not careful, they are entitled. They feel like, you know, they have the right to do something. They have the right to do this. They have the right to do that. And there are those kinds of people that go and step on other they go into other people's space. They go and, you know, just behave anyhow, privileged people, because they think the world is under their feet. They think they have a right to everything. No, you don't. But then it comes down to, what have they learned in the family setting? What have their parents communicated with them or to them? Have their parents ever told them no? Do they understand the meaning of no? The other person that came to my mind while I was, you know, preparing for this is a famous figure that we probably all know if you've ever went to Sunday school, and that's Samson. Many of us know the story of Samson and Delilah. I read through that story and I looked at it from the first chapter. The Bible says that, oh, he went to somewhere and then he saw a woman there, and then he came back to his parents and said, "Go get her for me." No, he said, "I want to marry this person." And the parents were like, "Do you really have to go marry that person? Can't you find somebody who is from our culture, who shares the same beliefs with us?" And he goes, "Go get her for me." And of course, from Samson went through many women, and every single time, we don't hear anything about his parents being part of that decision. We don't hear anything about any elderly person giving him counsel. It was all about him. It was all about him until he found himself in the laps of Delilah. And of course, he messed up his life. He messed up his destiny. Why? Because he was used to just doing whatever he wanted to do by himself. It didn't matter what anybody else thought. It was all about him. I don't know whether, the Bible doesn't tell us much about his parents, but the way his parents even went and got the woman for him to start with, I wouldn't do that. If you know that this child is going the wrong way, why would you help them to go the wrong way as a parent? You set the boundaries, you cut the cord, so that's part of the conversation we're going to have today. How do we develop values? How do we communicate our values to our children? How do we help our children to understand what is important, and what will help them in life? If we don't set the boundaries while they are growing up, we can only imagine what would eventually happen. God forbid. They will become entitled. Look at what is happening in our society right now. People, all the anti-Asian crime, anti-Asian hatred. You walk up to an adult person, to any human being for that matter, you walk up to them, you slap them in the face, you knock them down, you beat them up For what? If people have been taught to respect in their homes, if people have lived by the right kind of values, we won't even be having this conversation. Or somebody thinks that, oh, because they were bullied. One, bullying is wrong. But somebody thinks because they are bullied, then they have the right to go into a store and shoot people who look like the people who bullied them. We can go on and on and on. But what we are saying is that it starts in the home. It starts in the home. We need to set values. We need to create. We need to define values. We need to communicate those values. And more importantly, we need to model the values for our children. We cannot just talk. We cannot just teach. Whatever they see us do is what they are going to do. So how do we communicate them? We are going to go into details later on, but I just want to quickly, mention a few things. How do we communicate our values? One, we set time to discuss. There are times that we formally and intentionally have meetings to say, okay, this is what we believe. This is what we expect. This is what we expect of you, living in this house. I remember I told my son, I think it was his first year. No, maybe it was his senior year. It was his first year after graduation and he came to visit. And I told him that, okay, this time around, I'm not going to say that you have to be home at a certain time because now you're out of college and all of that. But you know the boundaries, right? You know what is acceptable and you know what is not acceptable. And I knew he was going to a place that was like 2 hours away. He wanted to go meet up with some of his friends that he hadn't seen. So I said, I understand that it's a 2-hour drive, but you know what is reasonable. And I was glad because he came home at a reasonable time. I mean, he's already out of college, he's already working, but I told him, as far as you are in this house, under this roof, we still have rules. So like I said, we set time to discuss. We itemize the things we consider important. We lead by example. We constantly repeat and reinforce the values. We don't think our children will get it one time. They're not going to get it one time, but we have to constantly reinforce it and remind them when they act like they've forgotten what we told them. And then we seize teachable moments. At this point in time, I really think this country is at a time where we can either, restructure and, correct ourselves and bring ourselves back on track, or things can just go down the slide. We're already seeing how things have gone in the past 2 weeks. 18 people dead, in the US because of some craziness, because of some people who have lost their direction in life, and it comes back to the family. I pray that as we go on and as we go into the breakout sessions and we really begin to share, I hope that we would get a good understanding, of what we really should be doing. How do we take control? How do we take charge? How do we set the tone in our homes? How do we determine the values that are appropriate for our children to live by? And how do we help them? It's going to take a lot of effort because one, they are only with you for so many hours. They go to school, they go to other places, they have groups, they have clubs and things like that. And of course, the internet is there, throwing things at them, telling them what is what is right. The internet seeks to drown your voice as a parent. But the important thing is that we must not allow it. We must not allow the internet or the society to replace our role as parents. Once again, I want to welcome you all to this session. I pray you'll be blessed as you continue with us. Okay, Sister Bola A, we need you to move us into the breakout sessions.
All right, I'm glad to do so. So I'd like to welcome you to the parent chat, the parent session. We're going to take off where Sister Bola Odetokun left off. She gave us an overview of what family values are. And so what I want to ask right off the bat is, how many of you have defined your family values? If you signify with a reaction, or if you want to raise your hand, if your video is open, how many of you have defined your family values? All right, we have one person who indicates they've defined it. So good. So this is why we're here today. So we can talk about family values and the importance of family values. Again, Sabola Odetokun gave you an overview of the importance of family values and what they are. For those of you, all right, I have somebody else who's indicating. So we have a few of us who have actually done that. So my next question for those of us who have actually defined the family values is, have you been intentional in sharing your family values with your children? In other words, if you were to ask your children, would they say the same thing, say these are family values and list them? Again, we're here to share and to rub minds and to learn from one another and to really kind of take a look at what we're doing and what we need to do and find ways to do better the things that we've been doing. Again, Sabola highlighted and said the values are what you believe in. It's a guiding light for you. It's something that helps. It's like a GPS, really, essentially, so that you know that this is what I believe in, this is what's acceptable, this is what's not acceptable. So you realize when you begin to steer away from those things that are consistent with your values. Now, of course, you have to each determine what your values are. With your family, sit down. They determine what your priorities are, what's important. Sabola gave an example of somebody who realized that being close to the family, being able to care for the family and being able to guide them in the walk was more important than earning a pretty high salary. And so they prioritize the family, caring for the family over the financial aspect of their lives. So again, it guides your actions, it guides your decisions, it helps you determine what's right and what's wrong. So I want to ask you, right, we'll just do it right here. How many of you think family values are crucial, that we must have them? I know we talked about how important they are, but do you agree with that premise, that it's important to set family values? All right. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and tell us why you think it's important to do that.
Family values are quite important. I would just like to say and add to what has been said already, because it is the foundation on which the family will be built on. As parents have already started the foundation, and then now you are having added on, which are the children. So with the children now being in the family, we will have to let them understand what are the values that you believe in and you have. And once they understand that, then they will be able to build on that, because together now you will be building the family together. Because children don't stay as children forever. They grow. And when they grow, they are already they become adults. And then they're potentially parents themselves, because once we as parents get to understand that we parents, they are going to be taking care of us at some point in time. So we like become their children at that time, because every responsibility that we definitely will be having at an older age will be more rested on these children. So once they understand the values at the very start, at the beginning, is the foundation, like I said. And once the foundation is right, we can build on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else have any comment relative to the importance of family values?
All right. For me, I just personally believe that when we set values as parents for our children and for ourselves, it gives us the direction of God's heavenly pattern for the family. And it's very, very important. When my children were younger, they're adults now, we had a measurable goals with actions. Because, you can just talk. But when you measure it and we sit together every quarter to look at those goals and to see how we can help them, how we can support them. And also, when we set these values, we have to know that we have to make sure that it's based on God's will for our lives. Then our children, they have to have the fear of God, because once they have the fear of God, it's going to be easy for them to be able to communicate with God on their own premises. Then also, one thing that I know that we did when our children were younger was integrity and trust. Because once a child has integrity from a younger age, it becomes the child's culture. And whatever the challenges the children are facing, because of that integrity in them, they're going to be able to waddle through the storm. Also, we always tell them that when they're not clear with anything, they should not just go about asking people. They should come back to us. So one way was that we put that kind of, I won't say it fear, but we put that in them so that they won't go to other people to mislead them to what our own values are that we had set for them. Then also, I know that once the foundation is solid, praying, teaching them to read the word of God, not choking them with the word of God, but teaching them to have a fellowship with God. No matter the storms of life, our children will always overcome. So that's my contribution.
Thank you so very much. And what a valuable contribution it is. She talked about, number one, having a background, right? Building them in the faith for those who are Christians, right? So that they have a basis, to start with, in addition to the specified family values. She also talked about having measurable goals, right? Because it's one thing to talk, but how do you know if you're seeing the impact of the things you talk about? How do they really begin to gauge whether they're making progress or not? So that's one thing that's really important that we can all learn from, ensuring that you have a way to measure your progress relative to the values that you've stipulated. What are the actions that you've taken relative to that? We all know about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, right? So within what period of time are you going to gauge to see your progress relative to the actions that match those values? That's one thing that we all need to begin to do, if we're not currently doing that. So it's important. We have the parlance that says what gets measured gets done. So when you know that you're going to come back and take a look at it and assess it, you're more likely to act, on those values. It's like having a deadline, right? And you're working, you have a deadline and I have to get it done by a certain amount of time. So it's top of mind. It's a priority. You're going to make sure it gets done within that timeline. But if there's no timeline, I'll get to it later. We all have those tasks that never get done. So that's really important. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else have anything to share relative to that aspect?
But basically just making sure they have an understanding of what we represent. I think the values represent the family, represent what you believe in. So making sure they have an understanding so that when they go out there, they can basically emulate what we've input into them, be it godly values, be it respect, gratitude, just the different aspects of life and how to represent us as a family, what we represent, what we believe in when they go out to school, when they're even with their own friends, and sometimes also being an influence as well to others. I think that's what we instill into our children as family values. There's certain things, definitely God first, respect, gratitude, being kindness, acts of kindness, but that's what we instill into our children, and we let them have an understanding of what they are, what they mean, and how to display them wherever they go as well.
Thank you very much for sharing. And that's important because when you say these are our values, if the family does not understand what it really means, what does it really mean? What's the practical translation of these values, right? And she talked about making sure that the children understand. By virtue of their understanding, they're able to influence other people. So what we do in our lives touches not only our children's lives, it touches other lives that our children come in contact with. So that's really important. So we need to be mindful to ensure that there's clear understanding of what those values are. Ms. Oye talked about, the Bible. She talked about, the fear of God. I think most of us, at least those of us who are Christian, are familiar with the scripture that says they should train up a child in the way he should go, and when he grows, he will not depart from it. What is that really saying to us? I mean, we could say that's a biblical reason for us to determine, family values, to set family values. What is that saying, to us? Another translation, one of the translations says that you should point your children in the right direction. And when they grow old, they won't depart from it. That's a strong case of family values. You're pointing them in the right direction, saying this is the right way to go. These things should be your anchor, right? These are things that are important. So this should be your gauge. When you do something that's different or not consistent with this particular value, then you know you're on the wrong path. So what does a child do, or even an adult? They steer back towards the right direction because they've been taught from childhood that these are your values, this is your anchor, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. This is not what you should be doing. So they understand that and it stays with them. Many of us, even at our ages, right, at our young ages, we still fall back to the things that our parents instilled in us, even subconsciously. It's just a part of us. No matter what it is, and it's not just about being Christian, but whatever your faith is, the values that your parents instill in you, they stay with you forever. Even more so as you grow older. When you're younger, you may resist them, but guess what? You fall back into that. So it's important because our children, how they turn out, we have a lot of input in that. So yes, you may teach children, they may not accept everything you teach them, but you have a big role to play as to how your children turn out. At least when you look at them, you need to be able to have peace and say, you know what, I've done everything I should do. I've taught them the way of the Lord. If you're a person of faith, I've taught them the right values, to be kind, to be good, to have integrity, to be honest, right? So you have the peace of mind that you've done everything you can to raise an adult that's going to be a productive citizen in whichever nation they reside. So I have a question for you. As your children grow older, should you seek their input with regards to your family values? I'd like to get you.
Absolutely, yes.
Please share. And why is that?
Yes, we need, as the children are growing older, there are things that we, in our own perception, we can think that this is the way that will help them. But when they have input and we ask them that we're not just there to be parents, so to say, but we're there to support them. So whatever issues that they have, I mean, number one, we have to develop a good rapport with our children. Many times we allow our jobs to take us away from what we need to do. And by the time we have that extra time, we're rushing them and they're not able to express themselves to us. Just like Sister Bola said about that family, that is the greatest investment you can give your child, to be with your child, to allow your child to have that kind of quality time with you. So I believe that our children should have input as they're getting older, so that whatever is bothersome to them or is a challenge to them, they can bring it to the table. For example, for me, with my daughter, I'm able to, by the grace of God, to mold her. But with our son, my husband does that, because there's some things that, as a woman, you can't be talking to your son, such things that are personal like that, But when we give them that, how do I put it? When we give them that liberty to trust us, and also to let them know that whatever, if it's confidential to them, I can assure them that if it's confidential, I don't want me to discuss with your dad, I will keep it to myself. Because there are some things that they tell us as mothers, but they don't want their fathers to know, because the father might kill them, so to say, with beating or smacking. But God will help us that we'll be able to be there to train them well. That's why I said the foundation is the fear of the Lord. If our children love God, they will go out of their way to do anything to please God. But most times we just throw the gospel at them. We don't allow them to talk back to us. That is why most times when they go to college, they turn the other way around, because we tell them don't go to dating. But we've not told them the reason why. But when they get that kind of opportunity, they misuse it. And God will have mercy. For example, my son was sharing with me a couple of days ago, because when he was in college, first year of college, sorry, I'm taking too much time. Maybe I should just keep quiet.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
When he was the first year in college, he used to call me every day of the week. By the time he got to second year in college, he was calling me a couple of times a week. By the time he got to third year, I was hearing that call. By the time it was the final year, too bad. That is it. But when he started calling me recently, for about 3 weeks, he's been calling us every day. He'll call me, then he'll call his father. So I had to ask him a couple of days. I said, boy, why are you calling me every day? I'm grateful, I'm not complaining, but what's the reason? And I told him what happened when he was in college. You know what he said? He said, Mom, by the second year in college, I started drinking. So there was no time to call you. So you can imagine, so that one struck me that, wow, we told them don't drink alcohol, don't do this, and blah, blah, blah. But we didn't tell them the reason why. So he said, now he's getting closer to God and he knows he has to honor us. That's why he's calling us every day. But God will help us to bring these children up in the fear of the Lord, so that they will stand without us being there or not there, in Jesus' name.
Amen. But even as you gave that example of him being a bit more distant, the fact is he came back. Though he strayed for a moment, he came back because the things that you instilled in him, even though maybe you didn't do as good a job of explaining why, as you said, the fact is those values were still there, and he came back, and now he's closer to God. So glory be to God. It doesn't mean that children are going to be perfect all the time. There are times where they're going to stray. They're going to be curious, right? They're going to try different things, and we just continue to pray on them, right? That the Lord will guide them and put a hedge of protection around about them. But the point is, those values, those words that you say that you don't even think are so significant, they resonate in their spirits. And at the end of the day, it's still right there, and they come back. So glory be to God for that. So we're grateful for you having shared the experience. But it's good for us to engage. I believe it's good for us to engage our children, because you know what? When you engage them, you cause them to think. We're not just telling them it's this, it's that. When you engage them and you seek their input, you make them a part of the process, right? And even as adults, the things that we're part of, we feel like we have a bigger stake in it. And so when you engage your children, they have buy-in. When they buy into it, because they're saying, you know what, I see the value, I see the importance, and they're part of making that decision, right? That discussion. Guess what? They're likely to really uphold it much more strongly, because they're part of the discussion. They're part of the decision. So I encourage us that as much as possible, let's engage them. It's part of educating them, even though you know where it should end. But when you stimulate their thinking and they're part of the discussion, then they're likely to hold it more closely as a value, because they're part of making that decision. So it becomes their value, not just a value that a parent is imposing upon them. It becomes their value as well. So I do encourage that we do that as much as possible. What do you think is the most effective way to teach these values? Is it just having a talk and saying, hey, these are the values? And even though you've had the discussion, how do you instill in it? Because at the opening, it was indicated, and rightfully so, that it's not something you talk about one time. It's something that you live, right? So how do we ensure that they don't forget these values, past the initial discussion? How do we ensure that it resonates as a part of it becomes a lifestyle for them? What's the best way to teach and communicate this family values?
Okay, I'd like to share on this one. My name is Faye. Considering what we're talking about, which is the family values, I think it's going to be different from one family to another, depending on what's very important to us and depending on what stage of our life is. So if your children are quite young, this might be the time that you are creating that process, building that baseline that you're going to build on, because if the foundation is not sure, you cannot build anything on it. And then you build on it now, and then is that consistency. Like we knew when we were younger, it's when a parent explains something to us again and again that we take alongside with us as we grow up in life. But if we just say it once or two times, then it might not make any difference because the child does not understand what you're talking about. We also know that when with any training we've gone through, we listen to something once, and then because it's reinforced again and again, it becomes a pattern or parcel and pattern of what we're going to live our life by. So I think our family value is something that we discuss, not just when we're angry. We discuss it all the time. We mention it when we're talking, when we're playing, when we're having fun, when we're traveling, when we're on holiday. It's just something that we do. One of the values we have at home is praying together. And when we have family staying with us, we get them involved in our prayer time together. So it's something we do. And unfortunately, sometimes even when we're not together, we might forget to do it. But because it's something that we've chosen to be a family value, it's very easy to go back to it again. And I think that's the best way about family values. It's something you discuss at the beginning, but you find a way of reinforcing it. So you talk about it, you encourage yourself about it. You don't talk about it only when you're angry. You do it all the time in fun, playing, just everything you do. And I believe that's the best way to reinforce it.
Thank you very much. Something to learn, because quite often when the child or the young adult has done something that we're not happy with, that's when we begin to spew these things and say, is that what I taught you? This, and that. So what's going to happen? That child kind of blocks it out because all they see is angry mom, angry dad, and they're just trying to really protect their feelings, right? So we're not going to be... I'm sorry?
I said, can I add to that?
Yes, please do.
I like the fact that Faye said, let it not be when you're angry then you say, have I not told you this? Mm-hmm. If I were, at this point in my life, if I'm a child, I'll say, when did you tell me about that? Because for many of us, we never have that time when we sit down in a good mood and have conversations. The only time the children hear from you is when you are shouting at them and screaming at them. My sister is here, so she can speak to that. Because have I not told you not to do that? No, you haven't told me. Which, so at what point do you need to sit down and constantly reinforce it for them? First of all, if you're a young family just starting up, you need to sit down and have family meetings. Sometimes when I tell my children want to have family meetings, they start rolling their eyes and giggling and looking at each other and say, okay, what does mommy want to talk about now? But I want that to be the baseline, and I'll refer to it in future and say, okay, remember when we sat down and said this? So parents, don't let's assume that our children know. Don't make the assumption. You have to sit down with them and have that conversation. It has to be ongoing. And you have to keep reinforcing it. Sometimes when I tell my son something, he will say, Mommy, you have told me like 100 times. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to tell you 100 times more until I see evidence that you get it. Until I see evidence that you're living by it. So parents, we must not stop. We must not be exhausted. We must not get tired. It's an ongoing thing. You have to keep doing it, but make sure that you have set it at some point. Let it not be that you start screaming at them when they get something wrong, and then they have no reference point to when you told them that this was not an acceptable way of living. You just assume that they will know. No, let's not make assumptions. Thank you.
So we don't want to be talking at our children. We want to be talking with them. Right? So let's talk with them, engage them, and get their feedback and explain why we disagree or why we think a different perspective is better. So we need to make sure that they really are receiving this and it adds value to them. So because it becomes theirs, you want it to be their value, not your value that you're imposing over them. So that's really, really essential.
Can I add to that, please?
Yeah, please do.
Ngozi Kalumba is my name. I just wanted to reiterate what we have been talking about, to say that in addition to talking, the children have to see that life in us. Mm-hmm. Whatever we tell our children to do, we must live it out ourselves. There's no, in this age and time, it's in those days when we were growing up that your mother will say, sit down, and you sit down without asking. If you do that now, the child will sit down, but will tell you, I'm sitting down, I'm standing up in my heart.
In my heart.
You understand? So
yes.
We need to, in addition to not only giving them reason, but
yes.
let them see it in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell a child, pray, let the child see you as a parent praying. Let the child see you and your husband, or maybe let's start from you and your husband praying together before you even call them in. Usually I tell parents, put your children on the side, not in between you and your spouse. So they need to see that bond between you and your spouse, between the entire family. Then you are talking to them, they are seeing what you are saying as the truth, as the way of life. So it's not enough for us to talk all the time. They also need to see us. By God's grace, my kids are adults. They are also starting to get married. And I remember when my son was preparing for his wedding.
You didn't say that they're already married. Well, you're already a grandmom, twice grandmom. So don't say they're starting to get married. You're already twice a grandmother.
I know he would ask what before he talked about marriage. One of the times we were talking sex education with them, and then after talking all the talk and all that, and I said, any question? And my son asked, he said, but mommy, how come in the house we are teaching abstinence, but the world teaches that you should use protective or protection? Mm-hmm. At first, honestly, as an African parent, I was taken aback. I was really taken aback. I'm like, how do I looked at my husband, he looked at me. How do we answer this boy? But God helped us. We were able to explain to him that is biblical standard. Bible teaches abstinence, and we were able to open a few passages of the Bible to him to see. So when he was getting married and I was telling him, how have you prepared for this marriage? And he was beginning to tell me the books he had read on marriage.
Okay.
My, oh my, I'm like, you are prepared. And then every other night when his father gets back from work, he will go and lay down with him. Because we have developed a rapport with them. They are free to tell us anything and everything. There's no foolish talk.
That's
and every night he would go tell his father, Daddy, pass on the knowledge. And then his father will call me, please, can you tell your son to let me sleep? And they will talk for hours on end, because he wants his father to pass on that knowledge that has made his own parents succeed. And by the grace of God, they are doing well. He has been able to build up on the values that we have given him, build on that for his own family. So these are the reasons and the values, or the importance of passing on this knowledge at a very age and living it out. Let them see it. Let them see integrity in you so that they can live in integrity themselves.
Thank you very much. So it's important that you have to be the example that they see. So you can't just say, do as I say. They have to see you doing it. So they aspire to do as you do, because you're living it. You're not doing something different. You can't tell a child, all right, we believe in honesty. It's one of our values. And then you turn around and the child sees you lying. Here's you lying to somebody else, right? Even those little white lies, they're still lies, right? So we must live the values. It's essential that we do that. Your values have not changed.
Oh, okay.
It's the timeline that's changed, because your core values, if you say integrity is important, right? Honesty is important, right? And having accountability is important. So you have not changed that, right? It's just that what is the time? As the child grows, all right? A young child's curfew is going to be different from an older child's curfew.
Yeah, that's true.
You adjusted the schedule, but your value has not changed, because your value it's a core thing, right? It's what's the core? It's the core of what you believe in. It's what guides you. This is right. This is wrong. This is acceptable behavior. This is not acceptable, right? But the things you do in terms of the schedule and the when and the how, those things might evolve depending on the situation, but your core value remains the same, right? If you're honest, you're honest. right? You don't lie some of the time. So pretty much your core values don't really change. You may adjust some things relative to the situation, but the core value, if you say honest is important, honest is important. If you say integrity is a value and that we uphold, your integrity, you don't change your integrity, right? So you may prioritize certain values over others, but your core value does not change. In terms of the administration of certain things, you might evolve. Those things might change. You would adjust to the situation, but your core values essentially remain the same because you are still who you are. You believe about, you believe in the things that are right, to guide your family and to guide you in the way you live your life. I want to thank you for the robust discussion. Thank you.
Sister Bola, I have a
yes.
question.
Yes.
If you see that a child is not following your values or is consistently doing something contrary to what you believe you have expressly taught them,
yes,
what is your recourse as a parent?
I think, first of all, for me, what I will do is that I will go back to God, pray very well, and I will take that particular child out on a one-to-one session without the other siblings. And I will ask him what his problem is. What's challenging to him, that, or does he have anything that is against what I've taught him? It's not going to be a one session. It's going to be a couple of sessions. But the most important thing is to win that child's heart to where you're going. Because the child that is stubborn, and you don't help that child will be stubborn for life. But when you come down to their level and let them express themselves, because it might be something that the child is facing with his own friends. These children, they talk with their friends. Like I always tell my children, then bring your friends. I call them goats, the one that are stubborn. Bring them home. Let's teach them how to be a sheep.
How to be a sheep.
So when they come home and they see the way we do things in the house and everything, whether you like it or not, they will change because you have put something inside of them. So that child, I will give that child a prayer point to be praying that God open my eyes to see. Just simple prayer. And I too will pray for that child in my closet. And by the time we have our final session, that is when I would have noticed some changes in that child. Then I will try to support, to help. I will never pull that child down in front of his siblings. I will never correct that child negatively in front of his siblings. It's just going to be between me and that child. And I will mold that child and mentor that child to be the perfect child God wants the child to be. And God will help us in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. I definitely prayer for those of us who are people of faith is of the essence, of course. But I think you also have to, assess the situation. Has this child always been one who resists rules? Or is this something sudden, right? Is this something that is this a recent occurrence in the life of a child? And I believe if it's something recent, then you have to kind of figure out that something is going on in that child's life. And as you said, it's important to have dialogue. That's why it's important to engage our children and to talk with them, not just, live a life of just talking at them, assessing them. So we're able to engage them and trying to see what's going on. And as we pray and we seek revelation and have those conversations, I think we'll receive guidance as to which way to best approach. But it's important because if a child suddenly becomes non-cooperative, then something is going on, and you want to be mindful of the self-esteem. So I really appreciate what Ms. Oye said about not, correcting them or really making them feel less than in front of their peers. So we are out of time for our session. The youth group is waiting to rejoin us. I want to thank each and every one of you for your participation in this robust discussion. Thank you all for what we've all learned, because I've learned some things as well that I'm going to incorporate into the things that I currently do. Iron sharpens iron. So thank you very much. And I hope that each of you have also learned something from this discussion and the input from each of the participants. So thank you.
We had a really robust discussion, and I made a note of it in the chat that they were all tried and tested modes of working with values. People made references to their own families, so that this is what has worked in one family. One of the big things that came up was that God's heavenly pattern should be the basis of all our values. One parent shared that once you set that right foundation, it is easy for the family to follow that particular direction. And also it provides that ability for them to overcome storms, because the world is coming at them with all kinds of things. When we say them, we're talking about the family as a whole and our children as well. The world is coming up with all kinds of things, But if we set that compass, we set that heavenly pattern as the foundation, it's easy to follow. The other thing that came up was that we also need to make sure these goals are measurable. We can sit as a family and assess where we are going with it, if we're doing well in that area or if we are not, because that is the only way we can grow, so that if there are any adjustments to be made, we can make them. Because one of the conclusions we came to was that values are core, they get adjusted. So we always need to assess to find out what must be tweaked so that it works, and then we see our family grow even better. The other thing was that these values that we set for our family, of who we are to the outside world. So we want to ensure that every time we set values as parents, we don't keep it in our hearts and in our minds and not share. We need to make it plain. The Bible says, write the vision, make it plain upon tablets, so that he who sees it will run with it. So we can't wait till we are upset or till a child has fallen short to scream and to say, you should know better, you should have done so and so. We haven't communicated effectively, and if the child doesn't know, it's difficult for them to follow it. Another thing that came up was that every family has different values at different times. We are all at different stages in our families, so it could change based on that. If you're working with, you have younger children, of course, your values would be reflective to younger children. If you have adults, if you have youth, it always has to adjust, but it's the core and it doesn't really change, it's just adjusted. And then last but not the least, we talked about modeling our values. We cannot set values that we as parents do not model. If we're telling our children that integrity is the value in this home, we can't then send them to answer telephone calls and tell them, who is it? Tell her I'm not it, not there. We can't do that because it's contrary to the very value of integrity, honesty that we've talked about. In a nutshell, I think these, and then the last, I said last but not the least already, I'm behaving like we are in church. We are almost done. And then we also talked about openness and sharing openly with our having an open door policy in the family. So that if something is working, is not working, we allow our children to give us an input so that as a family, we can move forward together to live out the destiny the Lord ordained for us.
I think you pretty much covered most of it. I think the first part that we also talked about was in communicating family values, they have to be defined. You can't just have abstract values. You have to have defined values. And, as parents, these are values that not just you don't verbally communicate these values to your kids, but you also have to live by these values. So they see you, what you do, and they follow suit, And so, like we also talked about, values are fixed, your values, if you say you have integrity, that's for a lifetime. It's not something that you could come back to your kids or your youths and say, hey, tomorrow, I'm changing these values. We no longer have integrity now, but they can be redefined based on the stages the child, is at that particular point in time, or the situation, or even the environment. Some environments, require that you redefine, or you mold the value to suit the family. So basically, defining our values and making sure that we communicate these values verbally and through our word, through our actions to these kids. So those are what we talked about in our session.
Summary for the youths.
So we kind of just run through almost the same points, and I think we agreed unanimously. One of the main things that we thought was missing from the poll was trust. Every member of the family should rightly be a part of these values, these value building systems. And, I think we had a great room, and that's one of the reasons I was thinking, did we have two rooms? Because we left saying, well, these people were right on top of their games, just because they made our work fairly easy, but they just, I don't think they were deviant kids in any format, right? They knew exactly what was expected of them, and they agreed with these structures that should be in place. Of course, just I think listening to what Valerie was reading about, what you talked from the parent side also, should these values change over time? No. For children where you would think they'll try and move the ball here and there, no, they pretty much stuck with the same value systems, or whatever things the parents were echoing. At least that's what I see come out. The only thing that probably differed, or what they would change given an opportunity, was they would rather be given more reins on freedom and trust. They understand that as they grow, certain things should be changed. And when we talk about freedom and trust in that respect, we also wondered, how would that affect certain values? For instance, if you're giving a child more freedom, how does it affect the honesty or the trust? And so they were also ready to say they know these things go in tandem, hand in hand. So if you're giving them more freedom, they would have to up certain instincts that I expected of them, just as trust. If I missed anything, on the whole, I think they were definitely satisfied with how things were running in their homes. Should there be consequences if there are any deviations? Yes, they felt there should be consequences, because if you deviate from any of these values, it simply means those values are not meaningful to you, or you are not a member of the family. And so there should be ways to rein you in. Another surprising aspect was, could we have external conversations with outside members of the family? Whereas they wouldn't think that's an infringement of their rights. External conversations meaning if there's someone that they respect or trust, they share some level of trust with, and there's something that's not going on well regarding the values that have been brought up, could we reach out and say, hey, talk to this and this, I think? And they were open to that, because they're open to making sure that these systems that have been put in place, these shared values, would work well, not only within the immediate family, but for the good of the community. So they're open to those things. Yeah, I don't think, I think that should be about it. There was nothing else they wanted to add except the trust, freedom. That's all we're begging for.
Yes. So that last bit about it's okay for us if the parent feel something is not going well to discuss with somebody that they respect outside. They also expect that if something is not going okay, the parent should be okay with them discussing with their friends as well, so that it should go both ways. It's not just one way. And they're happy that what they have is been from through training by the parents, and that they appreciate that it's been by trial and error. So exactly. We have a small group, but it was a good discussion, and they were
very impactful. Another thing I think I missed out of it, or we missed, when we asked about the top 5 values, and they started mentioning it was respect, but then somebody quickly interjected saying the top thing should be the sovereignty of God. God-fearing should be the number one value, because they felt if you had a God factor in it, all the other things that we're listing will be easier for you to achieve, which we thought, so whatever it is you throw at us, let's put God first.
Parents are doing a good job.
Exactly what we said. The parents are doing an awesome job. So you have some great children you should be proud of. Yes. I think, all of them agreed with these things. It was just, patience. And then someone also chimed in, forgiveness. What is other value? We should be ready to look at these aspects.
And I want to add something. The points where you said they asked if it was okay for them to also share with their friends, like when we parents go and talk to our friends about them, and it's very critical. If you know me and if you've been at any of our sessions, there's something I have constantly repeated, and that is to identify a group of people. It could be 2 or 3 people that you understand their values, you share, or they share your values. They, they have their head on their shoulders, and give your children permission to speak to those people. And the reason is that there are times that we as parents, we act up. That's the truth. We as parents, we don't listen enough. We as parents, we are quick to just judge these children. And one thing that I did earlier on, when both of them were in elementary school, and I'm glad I gave them permission, because I know them, I trusted them, I have worked with them. This is since like 15 or 18 years now, right? I know those people and I know their values. And I told my children that if I am not getting across to you, if there's something bothering you and you don't think I'm listening to you, you don't think I am hearing you out, I give you permission. You can talk to Afra, you can talk to Jumoke, you can talk to Ade. I don't want to mention the other two people because they are not on this call, but these are people that I have watched them themselves. They were younger at that time, but I knew that I loved the values they were living by. They were similar to my values. I knew I could trust them to mentor my children. So I gave my children permission. And up till now, as recent as maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I remember my son asking me, did you ask Auntie Afra to talk to me about something? Because at that time he was about to Rapport, and I think he was looking at offers from some companies and all of that. And I don't know what Afra said to him. And I said, no, I didn't ask her anything. I haven't spoken to Afra in a while. That was like 3 years ago, a little over now. But that is because I know that these people are staying on the right path. So parents, I want to challenge you today. Identify people who have their heads on their shoulders. Identify, and it doesn't have to be people of your age. It should actually be people who are younger, who can relate to them, because sometimes they would take it from other people than they would take it from us. That's the truth. It's just something about teenagers and youths. Some things come across to them better when it is coming from a younger person than somebody our age. So I'm challenging you, parents, identify 2, 3, 4 younger people, younger than you, but who are older than your children, who are maybe they have a career or they're making a career, but more importantly, people of integrity, people of honesty, people whose values you share and who share your values, who your children can go to when push comes to shove and you are not able to reach out to them. You are hitting the wall. You're just not, maybe communication has broken down. Let's not deceive ourselves. There are times that communication will break down between you and your child. They need a go-to person, and you need to give them permission up front. And that means that every now and then you need to touch base with that person so that that person understands what is going on and can, from a place of no judgment, no threat, reach out to your child and talk with them and counsel them and help them in the right direction. And I pray God will continue to guide us, because it is crucial. We all know what is happening in our nation. It is crucial that we have that kind of system in place.
I think it's very important for the youth to have somebody to speak to. Sometimes parents, in their desire to want the best for their kids, oftentimes present it in a way that is, I don't want to say not palatable, but not aligned with the way youth receive information. So we want what's best for them, but the way it comes out, it's like it's a command. And in this generation, honestly, it's parents are going to be parents, but there is a way that the youth of this time receive information. And so I think, and I use myself as an example for my family, for example, I have some nephews, twin nephews, they're 21 now. And there was a time when one of them needed someone to talk to, but their mother is she's a disciplinarian. She doesn't take any nonsense from anybody, from her kids, least of all. So she's a bit harsh with them. And I told her, I said, you know what, you can raise him how you want to, but I think it's important for somebody in the family to be a go-to person. And so I made myself that go-to person, because I felt like everybody wanted the best for him, but they were going by it the traditional old school way. Yes. The old school way where it is, you must do it because I say so, no explanation whatsoever. And I say, okay, I'll be the auntie that's like, come and explain to me what you're thinking, what you're doing. There was a time he wanted to go into music, and he came here to Nigeria to be with me for a while, and I paid for him to go into a studio. And my sisters were like, why would you do that? And I said, it's a strategy of mine. I want him to see me as somebody he can trust. So if there's anything going on in his life, at least he knows that he has one person in the family that he can speak to. And I think it's worked out. I think it's really, really important, as Sister Bola just said. It's very important. Somebody that they can identify with, somebody that they can trust, somebody who is a bit younger than their parents, but who is still young enough to understand them, and kind of like create that platform and avenue for communication, because I think communication is key. The youth are going through a lot. There's a lot of pressure out there, and sometimes they just need someone to talk to, but they don't know how to talk to their parents, because their parents may not receive it as they will not listen. Exactly.
Thank you.
May I come in just briefly? And this is not a critic, it's just to put a new light on what we're discussing this later hand. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the old school is a the best way to deal with situation. But we always have to also remember that human beings were different from one person to another. And the same thing goes for our children. As I think Bola kept saying in the beginning, people of faith, we have somebody we can go to. We can go to God. We can keep asking God. We can keep calling on God. Because Bola Odetoku might find it much easier somehow to deal with a child in a particular way. And Feye, I think Tayo might find it more difficult. Abby used something, she was talking earlier, and when we talked briefly about a stubborn child, the pronoun that came to her very quickly was he did this, he, you take that boy away, or maybe it was Tola, but you take that boy away, and it just to show us that in our family, if you are blessed to have boy and girl, you will know which one gives you more challenge than the other. And it's not an assumption, it's just the way of life. There's that gender difference. And then I remember when my children were young, I always mention a particular child that you're very she will respond back, she will push back. She does that every 6 months. So it's only the wisdom of God that will continue to help us, because we are also reacting to a culture that keeps changing. And we have to be careful the way we react to that culture that keeps changing, because we may react too much and not really be the best, not be a parent that our children actually do need. And it doesn't take away from anything we've said, please. It's just for us to be able to remember that I mean, I know in my family, I've had a particular child I've had challenges with, and then we keep on reacting, we keep on developing our values, we keep on working on it, we keep on putting our feet down, we keep on making it work. But the one thing I know I can put my hand on and I can stand firm on is a blessing and the grace of the living God. And I think that's something that I would want us to take away, to remember that our children are different. Even in a family that have 5 children, all the 5 will be so different, brought up by the same parents, same father, same mother, or in the same conditions, same environment, but they'll be just so different because they have their own innate nature, their own personality, the person who God has wanted them to be. And it is for us as parents to sit down as we're developing that value, to know the strength of that child and that child's weakness, and to see how we can work together as a family to get the best out of it. So just my own addition to this.
Question for the youth: what can we do to support them not to live a double life? Does any of the youth want
Good
to?
question.
What can we do to help you, youth? What can we, so that you don't have to hide anything from us? We don't want you to hide anything from us. We don't want you to be someone in the house and another person outside the house. We know that happens sometimes when we are too harsh.
Before they answer the question, I think one thing they'll realize is, as we do give the recap for both the youth and parent session, is that we're pretty much aligned, right? We recognize the need to engage them in dialogue and not talk at them and talk with them. That was highlighted. So I'm pretty glad that we're pretty aligned. You know, parents are pretty aligned with youth. So that's really heartwarming. So that means we've all been learning. So thank God for that. So yes, we would like to hear them share what we can do.
I think it could be communication, like get to know each other more and be more accepting.
So parents, we heard that, right? Communication. Yes. We should be more accepting, not be quick to judge. You know,
listen, put on and listening ears, right? Really hear them and think about it before we speak, because we don't want to discourage them, right? We want to really hear and try and understand and empathize with their position, their perspective. God help us all as we try.
This is why we like to have breakout sessions, because we want to have a different session with our youth. You know, it's okay if you are coming in, but please, going forward, we encourage you to bring in your youth so that they can hear it directly and they can hear it from somebody else. They can hear that, oh yeah, maybe it's not just my mom, maybe it's not just my dad, you know, and they can also know that this cuts across board. These are standards, these are expectations across board. It's not that my mom is running crazy, or my mom is too harsh, or my mom hates me. Like one youth told me that she thinks her mommy hates her, you know. And I really, really had to pray to get that thought out of our head. So parents, we encourage you, please, next time we look forward to having more parents coming with their children.
Okay. Sorry, Afra, just before you round up, yes. I just wanted to react to something Tola said in the chat. To the youth, do you perceive us as shouting moms? I am going to give you a little story. I was looking after my sister's children at a particular time, and I noticed that I was losing my voice consistently. And after a while, the voice came back. Then one day, one of them did something, and I raised my voice, and I lost the voice again. Then I said in my hoarse voice, "Have you seen you've made me lose my voice again?" And the 5-year-old said to me, "But I never asked you to shout." That was my lesson. I got the message loud and
Got
clear.
the message clearly.
And I advised myself.
That's a
She
good
did
one.
not ask you to shout.
Nobody asked you. You chose to.
Exactly.
Oh Lord.
Oh my
What better person to come from, as we wrap it up, than a 5-year-old? Had it come from someone older, it would go the old school way of you being rude. But the 5-year-old put you right back in your track.
Yes.
Thank God for that.
And then Jaden has something here. He said communication is one of the best things in life because you know that you can talk to your parents and you will live a happy life.
Yes.
Good job, Jaden.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have to work on that. We have to work on our communication with our children, and we're glad that you're saying
and then
it.
that's what Omochala is also saying. I think we need to have listening ears for our kids. So yes, that's true. I think we should all be, open to listen.
Approachable.
I think in wrapping up, and great session, listening to the background from everyone, and like we could clearly see, everyone is closely aligned. Nobody wants something else. So I think we probably walk different paths at times. I think we're going to leave here with hopefully a newfound resonance to say that we're listening more, we're talking more, we're opening up more trust, whatever it is. I was looking at it was in Makula Center, one of these, I think it was South Carolina University, but then they had done a little poll, and 9 out of 10 women could define family values as loving, taking care of, and supporting each other, knowing right from wrong, having good values. There are times when we look at these things, when we talk about family values, we go a bit on some other rhetoric. The first thing that comes to mind is the respect, the whatever. But it was interesting when I saw that information. It's more loving, taking care of each other. We just want to embrace around each other. Then another interesting thing I also noticed is most family businesses, and if we think of family businesses, one of the key things that comes to mind is Walmart and how they thrive despite whatever happens, right? But most family businesses tend to focus more on resilience rather than performance. When you look at over their long range of investment or their investment horizon, it's more of how are we going to make this. And like I said, Walmart comes to mind, but at the end of it, it's one of the most profitable businesses that we could ever think of. So let's leave this discussion thinking of these two things. How are we loving more? How are we taking care of each other? And pretty much what are we let's think more of how we could be resilient as opposed to just our performance. You need to do this, you need to do this and this. Let's be there for each other and hold each other tighter in these situations. And I think we'll be able to rise up higher and we'll be stronger with those things. Comes to the end of a great session. Any quick announcements that we need to catch on before we move on?
I just wanted to add, great roundup, Afra. Just wanted to add one more thing, that we should believe as parents in what we're teaching our children. Let's not be weary in continuing with communicating our values with our children, getting their input and growing with them. Let's not ever think that we're wasting our values or we're wasting bringing them up in the right way. I say this because as I've grown older, some of the things I kicked against growing up, I didn't understand why it was important, yet it was a value in my family. Guess what? I find myself doing those things now. Every youth here, yes, indeed, will do better in listening to you, will do better in communicating with you, and we expect and pray that you do the same with us. And let us all remember that bottom line, we want each other to be the best at who we are.
Okay.
Our next program, we just want you to be on the lookout for the announcement for our next program. I expect it's going to be just as robust, even more so than this one. So please be on the lookout and share the information when it comes out so other people can benefit.
So that wraps it up. Is there, does anybody have the flyer?
Yeah, this is parent-child communication, a virtual interactive session for parents and youth. So youth, invite your friends as well. Invite your friends, invite your neighbors. We want to talk about how should parents be communicating with the children? How should the children be communicating? What is acceptable? What is not acceptable? What do we need to change? Maybe our parents used a particular method for us parents. Maybe our parents used to speak to us in a particular way and we didn't like it. So now why must we continue that same method with our children? So that's going to be our focus in April. Please look out for details. We want to thank you for attending this session, and we really hope that you have taken some key points away from here.